I'm photographer David duChemin, and this is Vision is Better, a sometimes weekly podcast about the craft and art of photography. Welcome here.
Good morning, this is episode 59 of Vision is Better, and this morning I want to talk to you about creating personal work. This is part one of a two-part series, digging a little deeper into what it means to create a personal project and how to go about that. I get asked all the time, how do you go about creating personal work? How do you start? Where do you take it? How do you know when it's done? And really the only way to know how to learn how to do personal work is to start, just to do the work and to learn it on your own. I can give you some framework and that sort of thing, some suggestions and some ideas, then you have to do the work. And that's how you learn. So that's my disclaimer. If you want to create a body of work, you have to start, and generally you have to start before you actually have it all figured out. I have some other ideas about how to start this kind of thing. First, it won't surprise you to hear me say you begin with vision or some kind of intent. Pick something, for God's sakes, anything, but only you can know where your curiosity is leading you, what you're interested, what opportunities you have, or what creative itch that you've got that needs scratching. So start broad. You can narrow it down as you go if you have to, but you got to start by picking something. Too many of us get paralyzed by indecision. So just pick something, preferably something you care about, preferably something you care enough about to spend a lot of time on, because this isn't the kind of thing that takes, just an hour or two. Now write that idea down. Here's an example. I want to follow my son's hockey team for a year, or I want to do a series of photographs that portray the characters in my local pub. You're looking for an idea that's got some edges to it. I want to photograph whiskey might have a great idea within it, but it's impossibly vague for most of us. All right, so far so good? Now get started. You got to start by doing some exploratory work. Make a bunch of sketch images, and then when you have some idea that, that the project has legs, you're probably ready for the next step. You're looking here for your work to tell you something, give you some ideas. Which images work, which images don't work? What do you need to tweak and maybe try again? But I want to reinforce this idea one more time. Only by doing the work, making the images, and reacting to that work, seeing what you like, seeing what lights you up, seeing what new possibilities or ideas are suggesting themselves. Only by doing that will the project evolve and give you a growing sense of what it needs to be. Once you've done that, it's time to create some constraints. One of the hallmarks of a great body of work is cohesiveness, a single theme, idea, or story presented in a unified way. You might have a great idea, but presenting it with images made in all kinds of styles, it's going to look like 20 different photographers shot the project, and there won't be any consistency or cohesiveness. Constraints are the secret, if there is one, to productive creative work. Not only for the cohesiveness they can bring, but because they help us through the paralysis of having too many options. It's way easier to drill down deep when you have fewer options and you're less concerned about which lens you're going to use and should I use flash and should I not. So look at the work you've shot. Which stuff really plays well for you? What does it all have in common? Knowing that will help you understand what your constraints might be. Just look at the work, the stuff that is working. If it's black and white, then pick that as your constraint. Because you're shooting all over the place, that makes it really hard to have a consistent color palette, or if you are shooting all over the place. Maybe it's all horizontally framed. Maybe you use a very specific POV. Maybe you use a very wide lens. Anyway, whatever it is, choosing some constraints is important. It's important to get a sense for what this project is and how you're going to do it and what this project is not. So that's it. Start now and see where the work takes you. You don't need a storyline or a shot list yet. You don't need anything more than just an idea or an inkling. You begin a personal project with exploration. Then as you shoot, you can narrow down your theme. As you work, the work itself will begin to give you new ideas. Listen to those ideas, experiment with them, and then impose constraints. You can always change those later, the constraints. If there's a really good reason to take it from being color to black and white, or switching up, the aspect ratio, or if there's a really good reason, there's no reason why you shouldn't change those constraints. If one set of constraints got you to where you are, where you realize actually there are better constraints, then they've done their job. But I want to reiterate the fact that constraints will be your single biggest helper after you've just started the work. So let me show you an example of a project I did this year in India. This is a work in progress at this point. I should tell you, this is the first time I'm recording with a teleprompter. I've got new lights, new mic, a new camera, and I've got a lot of things going on. So I'm a little kind of nervous about this particular one. My hope with the teleprompter is that I will get a little better in its use, and that I'll be able to keep things a little bit more concise, because I do tend to kind of ramble off, and after I'm done, I think, oh, there were 3 more things I wanted to say. So having said that, this is a broader body of work that is an ongoing thing. I was teaching one of my workshops in Jodhpur, India this year, and as in all my workshops, I give my students a personal project. I don't tell them what it's going to be. They have to work on it, pick a theme, and then impose some constraints and go out and work their way through it. So this is the stuff that I worked on. I would never ask students to do something that I myself am not willing or able to do. And so I didn't have an immediate idea, but I thought auto rickshaws would be really cool. And I focused very generally the previous week, and I thought I want to kind of drill in to something. So I went out and I started photographing some of these auto rickshaws, which are kind of the lifeblood of a small town like Jodhpur. They're everywhere. They're the only things that can get down these little alleys. And that was my only thing, was, can I shoot these auto rickshaws? Can I find the people that are using them, that are driving them? And as I allowed that to be the thing that drove my project, I started to find more and more things. It wasn't until I shot a number of exploratory images and thought, okay, what's possible, what's not possible, that some of the things in my imagination began to get sparked. This was one of those photographs. I was photographing this girl, and I came back and I looked at the shot and I thought, it's not just the auto rickshaw drivers, it's the daily life, the commerce, the recreation, everything that goes on. And I started getting in a little closer, and I developed a shot list after I knew that I liked this idea, that I was curious about it. I made this image of this portrait of a rickshaw driver. We have no common spoken language, but I showed some interest in his rickshaw. It was a very different model than most of the guys were driving, and he just got comfortable with me photographing. They sleep in their auto rickshaws, and they eat, and they read their newspapers. This is obviously an auto rickshaw driver taking a break, reading his newspaper with another motorcyclist driving by, shot through the motorcyclist's arms. I thought maybe a really cool POV would be interesting, and went out with some long shutter speeds and just photographed other rickshaws moving past from the rickshaw that I was in. I went and took a drive with a couple of these guys and just asked them if I could make their portrait. Again, this came from a growing shot list as I began to see what the possibilities were. If you are waiting for yourself to get this full shot list, this full idea of what the project's going to be before you start, it's going to take you an awful long time to start. Nobody starts like that. Creative projects don't work that way. You've got to just start. You've got to get the ball rolling. To use another metaphor, you have to steer a moving ship that's moving. You can move a ship that's not moving. You can move the rudder and nothing happens. It has to actually be going somewhere for the rudder to steer it into new directions. And I think the metaphor applies in creative work as well. You've got to start. Doesn't matter that you don't know where this thing is going. You'll find out, but you have to start. So, some rickshaw drivers on their phones. Some of this worked and some of it didn't. I was on a motorcycle when I was going by this guy, and the guy that was driving the motorcycle, I said, stop. And I came back, and this guy was just holding the rickshaw up while his buddy repaired it, and I thought that was interesting. So this is an ongoing series. I think that's now it. This is an ongoing series of the work that I photographed in Jodhpur. When I go back the next time I'm in Jodhpur, I'll add stuff to it. I have a number of series that are going to be years long, and some that I accomplish and are done tightly within a couple of weeks or so. So there's no particular, it doesn't have to be a certain length, it doesn't have to take a certain time. It can be 12 images, it can be 100 images. That's up to you. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about developing developing this idea a little bit more concretely, taking the stuff you've learned in the exploratory phase, the sketch image phase, the implying or imposing constraints phase, and then kind of tightening that up and giving yourself some deliverables and making this something that you are more intentional about. Thanks very much for joining me. We'll see you next time. Remember, gear is good, but vision's better. Take care.